Welcome to Energy Matters to You, July 17th, 2018 edition. The Energy Matters to You podcast is a communication platform that features technologies and thought leaders working to advance energy efficiency. The Energy Matters to You podcast seeks to connect buyers with sellers so that practical, cost-effective energy efficiency and sustainable energy solutions continue to gain market traction. We're your host. My name is Leo Ryan, and on the lines, my co-host, Ron Galuli. Ron, how you doing?
Very well, thank you, Leo. How are you?
Good.
Enjoying the summer.
We're just talking about how you're such an energy nerd. You just can't get enough of this stuff.
That is true. I'm such an energy nerd, but I can't. You're the only one I can talk to about it.
Is that true?
I get thrown out of the house here. Yeah, I get thrown out of the house.
Yeah, well, speaking of your energy nerd predilections, I saw yesterday that you put a posting up on LinkedIn. This is something from Lily Franklin, Ideal Energy, having to do with using solar plus storage designs to tackle high demand charges. What was it about that motivated you to put that up on LinkedIn?
Well, I did read the article, and, my firm, we've been using Homer Grid, and it does mention or reference Homer Grid in that article. And it does talk about how some utilities are changing their rate structures to more of a demand-based rate. I know some of the utilities locally here, the demand charges have been inching upwards. So they're trying to collect, returns on their investments through demand charges. And one way to mitigate that is to look at different options, whether it's solar storage, could even be potentially wind. And we're using Homer Grid to assess those options and find out what the best mix of resources are for those customers.
Great. Well, clearly the utilities, we've talked about this a lot, recognize that there's more and more distributed energy on the grid, solar and wind in particular, and that they need to recoup their costs and make up for the lost revenue from generation. And so demand charges is kind of an easy spot to raise rates and collect more revenue.
Absolutely.
So, Ron, we've got a great guest on, someone from your contact network, Sean Becker, who's the founder of Sparkplug Power. And Sparkplug Power is sitting right in that spot to help clients deal with rising demand charges. Sean, welcome.
Thank you, Leo. It's great to be here.
And we've all confirmed that the technology works. We're all speaking to each other. So the first hurdle achieved.
Well, it's always critical to get the technical problems out of the way, right?
In all the things that we do. So, Sean, you got an interesting background. Spent a little time at GE Energy. I saw that. Some time with the Navy and a pass through with Greentown Labs. Can you give us a little bit of background on just on yourself in particular? And I'd love to know about your Greentown Labs experience.
Sure. I was in the Navy. My second ship was a new construction destroyer up in Bath Iron Works, where I essentially ran a microgrid after we built it, and that was the floating power plant of the destroyer. That's where I cut my teeth on the energy and power world. After that, I went to grad school here in the Boston area at a place called the Fletcher School, ethnic conflict and oil pipelines, and then I went into GE, dealing with hydropower and also sort of worldwide contracts on building power plants. In between there, I spent a little time with Daniel Yergin's business, the Cambridge Energy Research Associates, dealing with IPPs, the people who build power plants. At the time was Enron, Reliant, Dynegy, and others like that. But after GE, I ended up starting Sparkplug, and during that, I became a tenant at Greentown. I go back with the founder, Sam White, to when we were both working as me as an advisor and Sam as the sales guy for a combined heat and power startup a long time ago.
That's great. So, Sean, you start with the ultimate distributed energy system, a big ship, and then you get a chance to see those large centralized facilities. So that's a nice background to understand the challenges and opportunities that exist in power generation. So, Sean, we talked a little bit, Ron and I, as the show got kicked off, about this solar plus storage and the demand charge challenge. I wonder if you could just give us a sense of how you see the utility space, in particular, how they're currently dealing with demand charges and how they might look to the future to deal with them?
Sure. I think the prime driver to date is actually the solar industry. And so you see the rise of commercial solar and residential solar behind the meter. And what that's doing to the utilities is it's eating into their revenue. So overall, utility energy demand is stable or declining. And that means that their revenues are going down to some degree. But the costs of the grid don't go away. No matter if I use 100 kilowatt hours in a month or 200 kilowatt hours in a month, they've got to be prepared for me to turn on my AC and go from 300 watts to 14 kilowatts. And so the utility's got to find a way to pay for this. And they either charge more for energy, kilowatt hours, or they charge more for things we call demand, or that peak power usage. And so that drives a need to raise demand charges or to find some other way to do this.
Okay, so Sean, so having recognized that, this need for the utilities to raise demand charge, what was the spark, forgive the pun there, that got you to Sparkplug Power?
Well, I was part of the team that was selling GE Hydro where I worked, and my office was 185 miles away back in 2009. And GE had a small investment in a company called A123. I bet Ron's heard of them. They make batteries.
Yeah.
And so they had this great containerized battery. Rick Phillip showed me through the whole thing. And I was thinking, wow, manufacturing still seems like a really hard business, but we should be able to do something. Just like an IPP builds a gas turbine power plant, this looks, standardized, modularized, really repeatable. Definitely a place for this in the power system. It took me a few years to figure out where that place may be, and that's how we ended up getting to the edge of the grid, I think is the term of art that maybe Green Tech Media uses. But so where you're sitting,
yep.
Go for it.
No, Sean, just going to ask the question, just follow on. So you bump into A123, you get a good look at their technology and business model, I assume, and how they're going to go to market. And you say to yourself, boy, manufacturing a heavy industrial piece like a utility scale battery, that's a lot of work. That's somebody else's challenge. So what are you and Sparkplug going to do to solve this problem that you've identified?
So we're going to take these new, not so new anymore, technology and put the assets at the edge of the grid where you need that power, where you're paying for that peak demand. And so if you think about it, the customer class that pays for this is neither you nor I at our home, nor, the major industrial customers like ExxonMobil with a refinery or something, but those commercial businesses in the middle, where the cost of electricity is kind of like the weather. You're concerned about it, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And so the hospitals, hotels, light industry, even office parks, and we're looking at those areas where they're paying very high demand charges. Boston, New York, other islanded areas. And so we take a battery storage system, containerized, standardized, modularized, and deploy it there. And we don't sell the battery, we sell the service. So we sell that service to the customer who may not really care about batteries as much as Ron or I might. And we provide it to them just the way the utility would. Here's the service, turn your lights on, turn your lights off, and we'll send you a bill at the end of the month.
So, Sean, do you have particular technology partners that you're working with?
So we partner right now, our major battery supplier is NEC Energy Solutions. Not surprisingly, the follow-on company to the grid portion of A123 Power.
Great. And is there a particular type? Well, tell us where are you in the business development process? How many systems do you have deployed? What kind of uptake are you seeing in the marketplace?
So we started with a pilot project with our second class of customer, municipal utilities, out in Holyoke, Mass, in the center of the state. Holyoke Gas and Power is an interesting system where they have both rural and centralized as an urban area, and they have a whole bunch of solar and a whole bunch of hydropower. And so we put a network out there of a virtual power plant of small battery systems. We make a 5 kilowatt battery pack, probably fairly similar in your mind to the Tesla Powerwall. And we've networked those together with our own proprietary software. For bigger systems, such as where you mentioned Greentown Labs, we're going to be putting in a 280 kilowatt, 510 kilowatt hour system here in Greentown, and that'll be sourced through NEC Energy Solutions. We're also working with a solar developer to put one elsewhere in the state with a solar canopy over a parking lot. And that's driven by a tenant request of a property developer.
Okay. So, Ron, Sean's mentioned a couple of pilot and early installations, and it seems like there's a lot of overlap with your municipalities and state regulators. Ron, what are you hearing on the state level about integration of technologies like Sparkplug Power?
Well, one thing that we're seeing, because we touch commercial and especially industrial customers, is that there's definitely a growing interest among the customer base level for storage, and so obviously the solar is much more advanced and mature market. But what we're finding is there's really not necessarily many opportunities for them because the market really hasn't developed. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, and and Sean, I think, has some good insight into what's going on at the state level with regard to the value streams. And there's some controversy over the capacity and who's going to own what. So due to that, lack of market structure, I think, the market's poised to take off, but it really hasn't got to that level yet.
Sean, can you talk to us a little bit about what you're hearing on the state level with regard to legislation that might help advance some of these modifications to the edge of the grid?
Sure. I think, to date, the market in Massachusetts has been sort of, just like our pilot project in Holyoke, it's been grant-driven pilot projects. And this past year, the major program was called ACES, Advancing Commonwealth Energy Storage. And the Mass DEC made over 20 grants to help projects along. So what you see is there were about 69 applicants for those, and that drove very specific projects where people are testing out and trying to find what's marketable, what's doable. But what it didn't create was necessarily a market in the state. The next sort of legislative hurdle here is the SMART program, and you just had it up on the screen there, but it's basically the solar plus storage tariff adder that is being negotiated as we speak, and this is a way to add value to a solar project by adding storage and providing a supplemental revenue stream for that storage. So the theory behind supplemental means that you got to get paid somewhere else, and that's generally going to come from demand charges or other reliability payments. And as Ron alluded to, there's still a lot of debate, particularly from National Grid's interest in capturing the capacity value, but also from the rules and regulations of how you would dispatch this unit that make it still very uncertain how this is all going to play out, and thereby holding off developers like me from finalizing projects. But I think it will get sorted out over the summer here and allow the market to go forward. From a market structure, things like the investment tax credit and the production tax credit at the federal level have spurred a lot of development because they're crystal clear. You produce so much power, or you build such a big system, you're going to get this clear and definable amount of money back. And this, the complexity is trying. The aim is to give ratepayers, or you and I customers, money back in the whole utility system. But the complexity, drives a little difficulty in financing, and
Sure.
So that's really where we're looking for.
Yeah, okay. Ron, Sean just mentioned that SMART program, the Department of Energy Resources Solar Massachusetts Renewable Target program. Have you bumped into that? Is that something that the clients that you're serving are looking at, and a motivator for the implementation of more distributed energy?
We are just starting to include potential smart incentives in our assessments with our solar and storage customers that are interested in solar and storage. So what we've seen is we're able to model that with a home or grid, and definitely the paybacks are shorter. So, once that program is finalized, that's where I think customers will be able to take advantage of it. Once again, it needs to be solidified before developers like Sean can make proposals to customers that are real and the paybacks and are fully fleshed out.
Yeah. So Sean, the word uncertainty has come up a couple of times, and I imagine that's a key part of the objection that you need to handle when you're in front of a prospect. Can you just talk to us a little bit about some of the points of resistance that a prospect presents to you about implementation of Sparkplug Power, and maybe what your response is to get them over the hurdle?
So, the number one thing is people look at batteries, and if you're not energy nerds like Ron and myself, they seem new. And, does this technology work, I think, is the first question you got to address. And, what we've been doing this for a long time, and the systems that we look at are about 10 years old. So reassuring people that the batteries themselves are robust, the electrical systems involved are technically strong, and that this is straightforward to operate is key. But then the next question goes to, okay, if it works, how much do I save? What's in it? And there is where the uncertainty comes to bear, because you can model a lot of different savings, but if the market rules are in flux, it's there's a certain amount of future risk involved, and that in our model falls between the two companies, our Sparkplug Power and also the customer. But the way we address that we address this with our project finance as well, is that utilities really have two ways to pay for the grid. There's volumetric pricing, or energy, that cents per kilowatt hour, or there's demand charges. And if you pour more into the cents per kilowatt hour, then people are going to do more solar. We've already seen that happen, National Grid versus Eversource. National Grid has a higher energy sort of weighting, and Eversource has more demand-focused charges. There's more solar in National Grid, and there's more demand response and soon-to-be storage in Eversource. So we say we're positioned to take care of that. And then we find things that the customer may not have dealt with, but are pain points: reliability, backup power, and the like. And that often can be sort of the deal sealer, if not a financial consideration for a customer.
Great. So those two issues, reliability and backup power, add on there the fact that so much of the centralized utility grid needs updating, and that adding more capacity into the region is a challenge, because nobody wants another pipeline or another transmission line through their neighborhood. So all of those present opportunities for increases in distributed generation, and Sparkplug Power as a solution. What do you feel like are some of the wins behind your sale, in addition to the things that I just mentioned? What are the things that are driving people to look at Sparkplug Power as a solution?
Well, I think the customers who are interested in doing things have already started down the path. They've probably put in LEDs. They've probably put on rooftop or ground mount solar. So they're looking at their bill and saying, "Hey, we've knocked down this 20 to 40 or even 50% of the energy supply cost. What's this other part of the bill?" And all those charges stack up together are the demand charges. And I say, "Well, how can we address that?" And we say, "We got an answer. We do peak power demand management. We make it simple for you. We make it, seamless with your other systems." And so that's really, the class of customer we're going after. Someone who's already sort of done the energy things and now needs to focus on power or demand management.
That's a really helpful summary there. So in addition to these kind of philosophical attributes that the customer has, where they're already down the energy efficiency pathway, and they have the basic energy knowledge to recognize where the opportunity might be. Is there a market vertical or a type of client that you think fits best, has the greatest amount of opportunity for Sparkplug Power?
Well, I mean, we have sort of some hurdles or screens for our customers. Basically, we're looking at businesses that have a certain amount of demand, at least over 200 kilowatts. As the transaction costs, as you get smaller and smaller, the biggest criticism of our distributed model is that we're too small, and people would like to build much bigger and often centralized units. And there is some truth to that, and we have to be in the middle ground where I have a big enough customer that it's worth doing, but not too big that a wholesale generation with a gas turbine or something would make more sense. The second part is the cost of the demand charge. Certain areas of the state have very low demand charges, and so customers are in a good spot there. They don't necessarily need us. But the other parts of the state have demand charges $20 and more per kilowatt month. That's our sweet spot. You see that in Boston, you see that in Southwest Connecticut, you see that in New York City, and those areas are ripe for the picking. And the final thing is, customer profile. It's not just like energy where it's, how many gallons of gas did we buy? It's more, when did we buy that? Did we buy it on the Monday morning when the prices are high, or did we buy it Wednesday when they switched them over? Timing is the critical element for storage. And so we have to find the customers who have, we call it spiky profiles, or peaky, or however you want to define it. But just like our logo has a few peaks, we look for that in our customers' interval data.
That's great. So Sean, if someone wants to follow up with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way is through email. You can find us on our website at www.sparkplugpower.com. There's a contact page there, and reach out, either call us or give us an email, and we'll come right out.
Outstanding. Hey, Ron, any final comments or thoughts?
Well, Sean, I definitely appreciate your insight into the current market, and we look forward to working with you going forward, because I think this business is just going to eventually take off. And it seems like you're well positioned to really help the area customers take advantage of storage and solar.
Thank you, Ron.
So Sean Becker from Sparkplug Power, I want to thank you for being part of Energy Matters to You. It's kind of an elite family. So Sean, welcome to the group.
Thank you, Leo. It's been a lot of fun. I look forward to getting a lot of downloads and having a lot of folks listen to this.
I think that's kind of an abuse of the word elite, but we'll use it anyway. So listen, best of luck. And as Sean mentioned, sparkplugpower.com, one word, that's the place to find them. The website's got a bunch of information about the range of services that they provide. And he's got a blog posting and a couple of interesting things in there as well. And as always, check out refer the podcast to your friends at EnergyMatters2U on the Podbean site. Ron, any other updates that you want to provide regarding the podcast?
We hope to get back on track with at least one podcast a month. So again, if there's any listeners out there who are interested in being on the podcast, just please reach out to us, and we can try to coordinate that.
That's great. And as always, we appreciate the feedback. So the folks who check in on LinkedIn or email with us, it's a great way for us to get some feedback about where people are getting value out of this and where they want to see us go. So for Energy Matters to You, this has been Leo Ryan and Ron Galuli. There's work to be done. Go make a difference.